How about that? Very mature, very consistent, very balanced win for the Indiana Pacers on the road. What? Lots of surprising stuff from this game in general, just given the course of the Pacers season, stuff that wasn't surprising last year. What stood out today is the Pacers go to Philly, play the Sixers, a team they lost to already this season. And when they lost to Philly, the Sixers did not have Paul George or Joel Embiid. Tonight when the game started, both of those two players were available. Neither of them were particularly effective. The Pacers destroy the Sixers in Philly after losing to them at home earlier this season in what was one of their worst losses. They win by 14. Very impressive from the Pacers to do this. Two numbers stand out to me, and they're both the final score numbers. 121, that's a good night for the Pacers, given how their season has gone. We'll talk about how their offense was good. But the real standout one's 107. Good defense from the Pacers in this game, I thought. And I thought that's how they got things going early. They started off very poorly, down 9-2 in the snap of the fingers. Looked like it could be a tough night. You know, they couldn't contain really anything. They weren't scoring well enough. By the end of the first quarter, they were almost up 10, and they never trailed again. It got a little dicey in the middle of the second quarter. Late third quarter was pretty rough, but in general, a pretty, again, mature and consistent defensive night for the Pacers, who once they overcame that first little surge from Philly, looked great. Looked really great defensively. I think the start of the game, the thing that stood out to me on the defensive end was forcing turnovers. Philly finished the game with 15 in total, right? But in that first half, 12 of them for the Sixers. Maxey was seeing lots of different coverages, traps, blitzes, switches, whatever. And he had 5 of them himself, 2 for Jared McCain. They were kind of spread out outside of Maxey, but that pressure really mattered because in the second half, Philly did pick it up a little bit in the turnover department. They only had 3, but they didn't shoot particularly well. 40.4% from the field. They missed 5 foul shots. The only thing keeping them in it was offensive boards, which was the Pacers' biggest negative. We'll talk about that later. But I thought that was really impressive from the Pacers to hold up in the second half, just generically, right? Not giving up the turnovers, but really doing a better job actually contesting shots, preventing good looks. It felt like in the first half, they gave up a few easy ones. In the second half, that really went away. And so that was one of the better, I think, start to finish Pacers performances of the season on the defensive end against a team that isn't good on offense this year, but it is certainly no slouch in terms of what they can be, right? And of course, when they have all this, their stats don't reflect their season because of how banged up and injured they've been and what they've really been. But their offense when Embiid plays is certainly better than the crappy number they have for their full season, and the Pacers held them to 107. I thought that was a pretty good night for them on that end of the floor, and that's what stood out to me the most because that gave them a lot of wiggle room to have that bad stretch in the middle of the second quarter or to have that bad stretch into the third quarter and still maintain a lead or have a way to keep their foot on the gas even when their offense stopped humming, which most of the night it did, and we'll get to that in a second. They had a way to create and hold separation in a way that they typically haven't this year. They have not defended well for most of the season. So I thought that was very important for the Pacers, who are now above average in offense and climbing a little bit to 23rd now in defensive rating. They passed the Portland Trail Blazers tonight with this performance. Offensively, they're 14th again, back to above average. Still not good. Got some work to do, certainly. But 121, a good night for the Pacers on that end of the floor. Again, these aren't it doesn't sound crazy to win by 14. That doesn't sound super dominant, but given the course of the Pacers season, they should be thrilled with that. 107 is their 5th fewest points allowed in a game, and 121 scored is tied for their 5th most scored in a game, right? If you get hit both of those extremes, good things happen. In fact, they only have 1 loss all season, hitting 120. So lots of good stuff for them, just big picture, right? And the same thing goes for giving up 107. If they give up less than 112, they are now 6-3. Offensively, the standout thing, of course, is the star player, Tyrese Haliburton. A stat that I've been tracking all year is the Pacers' offensive effectiveness when he shoots a lot of threes. He took 15 in this game. Some of them were actually bad. He took a few heat check threes that were a little head-scratching, but he earned them because he made so many. 7 for 15 from deep for Tyrese Haliburton, who was also 5 for 8 on 2-point shots. He had 11 assists. He had 32 points. The Pacers are now 7-2 when Tyrese Haliburton hits at least 20 points in a game. That's pretty good. Turns out when your best player plays well, it's easier to win, and that was the guiding thing for their offense. He hit 4 of those threes in the first quarter, which really set the tone for how he was going to be guarded and what his effectiveness was going to look like. It just adds such a huge element of spacing to this Pacers team that is searching for any way to get up more threes when Haliburton himself can A, get up those himself, but B, just add general spacing to the floor by spreading out with his own shot, right? That allowed Miles Turner to take his three, even only 25 minutes. He was dealing with foul trouble. Classic Miles Turner against the Sixers game. Andrew Nembhard took two. Pascal Siakam made both of his. Ben Mathurin, this is great. He went 1 for 5, but he took 5. Catching and shooting, that's something he needs to be getting going. Taking them with more confidence and quickly on those catches. He did that very well in this game, right? Even though he only made 1, I think that process was good for the Pacers. 4 attempts for Obi Toppin. We'll talk about him in a second. He was awesome. And then a couple more from some other bench guys. Johnny Furphy made the biggest three of the game to me when the Sixers got it close late in the third quarter. His three that he made extended the Pacers' lead. So getting up threes was huge, and that was all possible because of Haliburton both making and creating them. But in general, I think the standout thing for the offense in this game, non-Haliburton division, was just the ball movement for the Pacers was so crisp and solid, right? That's so generic to say. It's so easy to say that when the shots are going in, right? It makes the process feel better when the result is good, but they were really moving it. 35 assists for the Pacers in this game. That ties their season high. The only other game they hit 35 was actually that loss in New Orleans against the Pelicans, but this is now their 10th game with 30 or more assists. They're 8-2 in those games. Obviously, an assist requires a made shot, so more assists means you're going to have a good night offensively, generically, but that was, I thought, a good thing for the Pacers to see that really happen, and it didn't feel like just passes that led to baskets. It felt like passes that created baskets, right? Ping-pong it in through the zone, move it around constructively on the perimeter, not just you to you to you to you, and then, no shot came, right? All passes with purpose and product, and that really stood out. No matter who was on the floor. 11 assists for Haliburton, obviously a big part of that, but 7 for Andrew Nembhard, who had a very good game. His stats were super, not jumping off the page, but he was plus 24 for a reason. He defended Maxey very well. He had 7 assists, 4 rebounds, 5 points, only 1 turnover. TJ McConnell had 4 assists. Toppin had 3 assists, 4 for Mathurin, which is very good for him, 3 for Pascal Siakam. Everybody was chipping in, keeping the ball movement. And so, big picture, it sounds stupid to say, but both the score and the points allowed for the Pacers paint a picture of the game they had. They had one of their best 5 by results defensive games of the season. They had one of their best by results offensive games of the season, and they won. Shocker. But they did good things on both ends that they'll hope they can carry going forward, right? They don't know that. But of course, they'll be thrilled that after having 4 days off, after having chances to practice and really hammer out what they hope to be this next month of their season is everything, they finally showed something. They finally showed some consistency in a way they hope to build off of. They had a good game like this in Chicago last weekend and fell flat on their face at home 2 days later on a Sunday against an inferior opponent. They're set up for a similar scenario right now with the Pelicans in town in 2 days. But that was a good, mature performance from the Pacers in Philadelphia. Much more on this on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Thanks for watching.